Okay, let's do a roll call first, please, Heidi.
I can just do it.
Okay.
Mayor Laughlin,
Here.
Sexton,
Here.
Morahan.
Here.
Dean.
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Stulman.
Here. Okay. Purpose of this meeting, first of all, is to have Maggie Spear Financial explain some of our debt and if future askings. And anything else you want to explain.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mayor, everyone. I'm Maggie Berger with Spear Financial Hack. Thank you for having me. So we're going through the red outlines any general obligation debt that the city had. I remind you, your general obligation debt can be paid with a debt service levy, but it can also be paid with any other sources that you have deemed that it could be paid with. That could be water sources, sewer sources, could be maybe local option sales tax, could be TIF revenues. But at the very least, you're gonna have to pay it with debt service if you do not identify those. Those decisions get to be made each and every year when you're levying and putting together your budget. So when you're doing those long-term debt pages, typically you're telling us up front how you want to utilize those sources of revenue so that we can talk through it so that you can see what the impact would be to the debt service levy, but those can be changed from time to time. So just looking at that 2013 debt there, I just want to point out what's in that box. So it shows you the amount that was issued, shows you the date that was issued. The TIC is the true interest cost. So before your meeting, you were having some sidebar conversations about paying debt off. We've identified on the yellow pages, as Heidi was saying, some debt that's going to be paid off, but I will remind you, we have a lot of debt out there in that 1 to 2 to 2.5% range. And you're probably getting 4 to 5% on your money right now. So although there's some ideas that paying debt off is great, you have to look and do some comparative analysis as to if you should pay that debt off or if you should be making money on the cash that you were going to use to pay that debt off at this point in time. The 2013 bond is callable. You have to go to page 2 and look at the 2017 bond to see that we've done an underline under that 2025 principal amount. That indicates when the call date is. So anything that has a line under it, there's a call date out there in the future. And that just means that bonds are sold as investments. The investors are not going to let you pay the debt off early. If they say you can pay the debt off early, they're going to give you a 6 or 6.5% rate, right? They want to make sure that they're getting their investment for a certain number of years. The 2023 bond is your newest bond outstanding. That's callable after 2030. And that one has a little bit higher interest rate because interest rates were on their way up at that point in time, 3.5243%. Today's interest rates probably would be in the range of anywhere between about 3.75 and about 4 to 4.25%. We're starting to see those interest rates trend in the downward fashion because of what the Federal Reserve has done recently with a 50 basis points rate cut, as well as what they say they're going to do in the future. So we think that those rates will continue to trend down. Do I think we're going to be in 1.5% and 2% interest rates in the future? Probably not. But also remember that as those interest rates on municipal debt comes down, interest rates on your own debt will start to come down. You'll start to see mortgages rates coming down. You'll start to see car loan rates coming down. But the flip side of that is interest income will start to go down as well, because that means reinvestment rates. Your CD rates will start to go down. All those things that the Federal Reserve really corresponds or coincides with will start to change. We give you the total principal, and then on page 3 of the red document, we talk about how you pay that debt down. You're using some sewer revenue, you're using some water revenue, we're using some local option sales tax, and we've identified those by the bond issue just so that it can kind of line it up. And then the yellow column is TIF revenue, and that is based on yellow pages. That's why that's a yellow column. So we'll get to those pages in just a few minutes. You will be levying approximately $299,632 in debt service levy for fiscal year 26. That's slightly down, maybe down about 55,000 from the year prior. We have some conversations going on about future borrowing for the city and how we might keep that debt service levy at that 350, wrap in some new debt, that can be paid with multiple sources of revenue. But that will all come to you guys. That'll be up to you guys to make those decisions as we get closer to knowing what those capital improvements are gonna be for 25 and what hearings need to be done and what we can put into that budget as you start that process. Which should be months away, and it's not months away.
So the line above that is 354 million.
That's the 354,000 is what you
Thousand.
are levying for fiscal year 25 that you're currently in. So we've all gone in and hopefully you've all paid your taxes by now because it is past 5 p.m. on September 30th. And so part of what you're paying is making up that $354,000 in debt service levy. I want to remind everyone, I had to remind my dad like last week. I was like, did you pay your taxes? He's like, I'm gonna go in and do that. So. The orange pages are our revenue debt pages. This is where we talk about any revenue debt that is outstanding. The city has only SRF revenue debt outstanding, that's state revolving fund. That's that low cost financing option. The 2005 was a water revenue debt. The 2007 was also a water revenue debt. Interest rate on the 2005 is 2%. Interest rate is 3.25% on the 2007. It was just much smaller loan, and when rates went down, it was not able to be refinanced just because of how small it was. There was not enough net savings for that loan to go down in size or to go down in interest rate. You have the sewer revenue debt from 2022 at 2%, and then the water revenue debt from 2024. That interest rate is about 2.68%. That got locked in most recently in the May timeframe. And that is for what I believe phase 2 of your water main projects. We did phase 1 in that 2023 GO debt because we weren't really wanting to raise water rates as much as we would have needed to make sure all the revenue debt that it was paid with all revenue debt. We split that between GO and some revenue debt. The biggest takeaway here is all revenue debt has to be paid with the revenues of the system. So you have the water revenues paying that debt, the sewer revenues paying that debt. Take away, no property taxes could ever be levied for revenue specific debts. Now, your 2013 debt that we were talking about, and you did it for the sanitary sewer lift station, you did that as a general obligation bond, meaning it can be paid with property taxes. If you choose to do a debt as a revenue bond, it cannot be paid with property taxes. We go on and we look at some rebate agreements. We've got a couple of blank areas here, but those are just ones that we're waiting to sort of start. And for when those rebates will start, we'll start to add some information to them, like that Advantage Development Lot 13 and 14. We've got still our Casey's Marketing. We've got EMB Holdings out there. And then we've got some other Advantage Developments and Advantage Rentals. KLM The Meadows, that should have been out there longer, but that one has produced so much increment in a much faster time frame. That one is set to pay off here in 2025. Based on that development agreement. Again, remember, you are what you do with a rebate agreement is there's blank ground. The developer says, I'm gonna build so much and you're gonna do something for them. You're gonna give back part of that money. In housing, you can only rebate back on the infrastructure that they put in. Water, sewer, stormwater, curb gutter, streets, things like that. So again, we put not to exceed amounts in there. And once they meet that not to exceed amount, that rebate ends. So once the city has given all of the revenue to them to meet that one ends, even if it is before the 10-year time frame is up on that. So
We stopped collecting LMI on that also.
then you will stop collecting LMI as well. Correct. So you don't have to collect, actually you've stopped LMI because the LMI is only 33.32% of the 395. And I think we've determined looking at your accounts that you've already collected that amount. And so usually by the time we get to the last 1 to 2, even 3 years of an agreement, we don't have to collect LMI any longer because we've collected what is necessary.
There's a caveat.
Okay.
No, technically not, because we did not ask for the LMI. For the TIF. So this is gonna extend about a year or two, because we're gonna ask for the TIF LMI for this in this December.
We didn't ask
And we
for
won't
it.
collect.
In the early years, we didn't ask for it.
In 2018 or 2019, when this happened, we only asked for the rebate portion. We did not ask for the LMI portion.
So, there's enough TIF rebates out, there's enough TIF revenue out there to do that. And you'll still, even if this goes on for 1 or 2 years, you
Yeah.
still will be paying it off.
Yeah.
Before the 10-year.
Yeah.
So.
Acciona. I know we don't agree, we always turn it down, but how come it's not listed on here? I mean, it's still an obligation that we have on our books.
I don't believe that it is. Is that, wasn't that the court case?
No, the contract is still, we still have to consider it. That's our only option.
Right. So it should still be, I mean, it should be on here. But if somebody, what if?
That's a question we can have with Kevin.
Yeah.
In all of our conversations, we have Kevin review these purple pages. He's not telling us to put it on there. And maybe it's because he assumes you're not going to
He sounds correct.
give a
Yes.
rebate to them. But he has not had us put that on there since. He did have it on there prior to the court's decision and the payout, and then after that, it was removed.
Good.
So. All right, and we'll go back and look at that one and see how long that original agreement was supposed to be out there, but I don't think it's that many more years, is
No, it's
it?
indefinite.
Yeah,
It's
'cause
stubborn.
Oh.
It's
as long as
stubborn.
we keep saying no, it just keeps rolling over.
Correct.
Okay.
7 times. They gotta get paid 7 times. Well, they've been paid like 4 of them.
Sounds good. We will do some more research into that. So we give you your total rates right now. There's no LMI, other than what Heidi was talking about for KLM. Otherwise, your other rebates at this point in time do not have any LMI, to them because commercial rebates do not require LMI dollars, just, residential rebates. We go on and we talk then about the TIF revenue pages. This is where we talk in the yellow portion of the report. So really what this is doing is any of the debt in our red section, if it is being paid with TIF in full, if part of it is being paid with TIF, this is where we break that down. And again, we have that conversation with you guys early on, right? We don't do that after the bonds are sold. We usually are having that conversation before the bonds are sold because we're all figuring out how is the most effective way to pay the debt back. So we've got those breakdowns there. And then as you can see, one of our other sidebar conversations earlier in the evening was that in 20, down there, we've gotten some red lettering there on page 1. The city intends to pay off the 2016 B bonds on June 1st, 2025. And the city intends to pay off the TIF portion of the 2016 A bonds on June 1st, 25, in these amounts that are shown. And so we've got, there's gonna be some amounts that are gonna be paid off on that 2016 bond as well. And again, that's just looking ahead at some of the TIF receipts that have been received and how to go ahead and get those off the books. 2013 debt is your other GO debt that's being paid with TIF revenues, and that's just a portion of that that's being paid. And then we've got your total property taxes or total dollars that transfer. That's where that column meets up with the red pages. We've got the purple column. That's where we're bringing in those TIF rebates. So our total TIF asking for fiscal year 26, again, this will adjust a little bit, is about 474,000. It'll adjust based on that LMI, what other amount we need to collect for those LMI dollars. And so we've got that there, and those will be coming to you guys probably at your either your October or your November agendas. That's typically, we're just here a little earlier than normal, just trying to get everybody's TIF reports out to them. And so we'll be working with the city to make sure all those documents get signed and over to the county for certification by December 1st. Now we get to talk about the fun stuff, the debt capacity, and this is the green pages. So I want everyone to, remember back, we're gonna look at column number 2 and read straight down, but I want you to remember back to about 15 months ago. You all got notices from the county saying that your property valuation on your home or your business was going up. You hadn't done anything to warrant that kind of an increase. But the city overall in 100% valuation, this has nothing to do with, taxable valuation. In column number 2 is $368,016,718. That is an increase over the $281 million last year. That is a 30.68% increase. Statewide, we're seeing anywhere between 20 and 35% valuation increases on that 1/1/23 date. We do not have 1/1/24 numbers. Those won't come for another probably 2 months or so, but we do know what we've been told is that that number will probably remain fairly flat. And we probably won't see any large increases unless you have an increase because you've done something to your home or to your property. When we're looking at that, again, so we've knocked that down to a 2% because you are growing here at the city of West Branch. But looking at column number 2 and reading down, 368 million equates to 5% of your 100% valuation is your debt capacity. That's 18,400,000. I want you to compare that to column number 1 as well. Just because of that valuation increase, you increase your overall debt capacity by $4 million. And again, we're seeing that pretty commonly, anywhere between $1 million to $4 and $5 million. You have debt outstanding of $6,245,000. We've got rebate agreements that are annually appropriated of about $154,000. We've got GO debt that will be paid back this year of $975,000. That leaves your remaining debt capacity that's not obligated of about 12.9 or almost $13 million, about 70%. There were years when we were issuing debt and we were playing the calendar game to wait until bonds paid back in June to issue new debt so that the debt capacity looked better. Although we all are probably paying a little bit more in taxes, potentially on your home, the valuation increase did significantly increase your debt capacity. So things do not look as they had in the past. You've gained debt capacity for sure.
Does this 12.9 number have our 20% that we try to keep back?
It does not. So you go down a couple more lines and that contingency reserve, that 20% is now about 3.6 million. So after the contingency reserve, you have about $9,296,000, about $9.3 million of debt capacity. I appreciate that question because we do talk highly about that and still is very, very important to maintain some, money there for just reserve, just in case. And just in case, in my opinion, is not always bad. Just in case is somebody calls and says they're gonna move to town and you need to build a turn lane for, their new business. And those are the just in case dollars that, we talk about. So again, you're at about 50% of remaining debt capacity when we get, to that contingency amount. In our conversations with your administration and CIP coming up, we've done some scenarios for them. We think comfortably between like maybe 2025 and 2027, based on some ideas that your engineer has given us. You will have some borrowings coming up in the GO form. And we feel comfortable that those are going to be able to be accomplished easily and still have really good remaining debt capacity after that because of this increase. It would have been a little tighter had there not been that increase in valuation. So things do look a little brighter there. This goes on for a couple of pages, and then we get to our blue pages, and this is where we talk about the TIF districts themselves. So on this part of the report, we're talking about anything that's grown since the inception to be paid back with TIF, how much valuation has grown. And so we've got about $81 million in commercial growth in your TIF area. We've got about $14 million in industrial growth. And then the biggest one is residential. Now, I want to point out that the residential went from 26 million to about $47 million in growth. Interestingly enough, there is no longer a multi-residential category that is called out by classification. So part of that growth, although it is part of the natural appreciation of the valuation based on those, 1/1/23 tax statements, also part of that is rolling any multi-residential property that you had into this new residential number because that classification is no longer outstanding. And so we have to account for that.
These numbers are growth after the initial,
Correct, after the
And-
original TIF districts were set, so anything that grew on and over TIF districts as they were set. Yep, yep. So that's about $108 million, and remember, you're at about $368 million in total valuation. So the $108 million taken times the TIF tax rate, which is $28.85 here in the city, generates about $3.1 million in TIF revenues. You're using roughly about 375 this year on your GO debt obligations, about 154,000 on those TIF rebate obligations. So you have unclaimed TIF dollars of about $2.5 million or almost $2.6 million. Again, a little bit higher than they were last year, but part of that is you're generating more. You're generating actually about $700,000 more in TIF receipts than you have in the past. And again, that's partially that natural appreciation. So our goal is when you issue new debt, that we may need to take on some additional TIF askings, but it should not be in a way, in a manner that it's going to affect your general fund. We're hoping to, be able to capture some of these types of growth opportunities when they happen, to be able to bring more askings in to service any debts, any obligations that you have going forward.
Do you have any percentage of what asking we should be offering?
So you can't ask for more than what you have obligations for. And so as we were talking about, like on the yellow pages, the only obligation of GO debt that you will have after this year will be that 2023, and it's not callable until 2030, which means you can accumulate all those dollars probably over a couple of year period to pay off the 2030 to like 2035 maturities, but you really can't collect anything more ahead of that because you can only really collect for what becomes callable in the future. So I would say, yeah, we probably, I look that you will have new debt by next fiscal, by this time next year, which will then add to your askings, and hopefully what we're no longer asking for, because that 2016 debt will be paid off, we can ask for then and sort of swap out those dollars, if that sort of makes sense.
Mhm.
Our whole goal is that your debt service levy stays like this, that your TIF askings stays like this. I mean, there might be little bumps, but we want it to all kind of stay the same, because for every TIF dollar that's generated, new TIF dollars generated off of new development, remember, a third of what makes that up, a third of the valuation goes to the city, to the county, and the school. So if you start asking for more TIF dollars, and there's not the natural growth, there's not growth to offset that, all of those dollars, you're gonna harm your general fund by at least a third of that asking. And we don't want to do that because we know budgets are tight anyways, because of House File 718. So we're gonna play that really nicely. Now, this year, when it all gets said and done, this is part of what we look at is how much TIF askings you have compared to last year. And if you are low on the TIF askings compared to last year, that's where we would then ask ahead for the 2023 debt, just to make that, to kind of make that up. And then that just gets set aside and designated that it'll be used in the future to make, part of that 2023 payment when it's callable. Okay. Any other questions for us? Again, like we said, we assume you will have some debt issuances, but I feel like we just issued debt for you guys. And I know that your engineer and your administration is working on those projects and kind of outlining timelines and things like that. Again, I think from a borrowing standpoint, getting us into spring of 2025, we anticipate interest rates will have come down a little bit. Again, I don't think we go back down to 1.5%, 2% interest rate, but we would be really wonderful if they'd be in that 3.5% or the 3.25 to 5.5% range for 15 to 20-year debt. So
So we're talking the new capital improvement plan, Maggie. There was one peak year or two, maybe year 2 or 3, where the levy may be higher.
correct.
And this is our general thought between Heidi and myself is our benefits levy is in really good shape. And we might be able to just take it down those 2 years. But that's gonna be up to you guys. In terms of can we do it? Yes. And do you want the rate to go up? Yes or no? Would be where our direction is.
Yeah, and I point out, we gave you guys those views. We're also running our interest rates on those borrowings. Now granted, the borrowings could change size, right? Because we all hope that the borrowing's gonna be this, and then it always is a little bit more. But we were running those at 4%. Again, we were anticipating that we'd get to that 4%, and we're starting to see ourselves a little below the 4% right now. So hopefully conservatively, maybe we're at 3.5. That would help bring that down, but I don't disagree. I think figuring that out now, we also only had a $50,000 amount in there to support TIF revenues. So that's where we may be able to look and say, well, can we support TIF revenues 75,000 instead of 50,000? That would help smooth those 3 years, because you're right at about $1.70 in debt service levy right now. And we're looking that would go up maybe 10 to 15 cents in that 3 years of like 27, 28, 29. But again, there's a whole lot of things that play into that between interest rates and borrowing size and things, but that's where I think, yeah, we absolutely have to look and see how we can smooth that down a little bit. Because then we drop off pretty significantly after that. So it's just those 3 years. And if we do other things like remove principal from those 3 years and don't make any principal payments, you may pay for that in interest rate from the underwriter saying, well, we're not gonna wait till 2029 for you to make a principal payment, right? You've got to make some kind of a principal payment. So we're figuring that in there as the least amount of principal payment that we can make logically and still be able to get your debt going and starting to pay it back. Questions? Anything else?
So we're planning for Cedar Johnson Road.
I believe that's the project that we're talking about in 2025.
Yeah, I'll have Dave probably give you the rundown, but yes, it's Cedar Johnson, up to Prairie View. And then it is Main Street, which is just milling. And kind of improving the shoulders, and I think that is from the roundabout to maybe the bridge, but. Dave, if you've got the exact numbers or the exact dimensions, that would be great.
Thought we were gonna try to get to Greenview.
Yeah, Adam, what we were looking at for the immediate phase was.
If you want to increase the tax levy, we can certainly go.
Is we don't have.
Actually, right, it does go to Greenville. Because yes, we're making changes to that intersection. So I'm sorry, hold you wrong. It's the green.
If we borrow from the 92, about 92 million this year, and that's been good this year.
We'll take them here in a minute.
It's muted still.
And we were kind of waiting on the final direction, I think, as Maggie's kind of stating, we're hoping interest rates go down a little bit in the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Doing it right now.
Yeah. What you likely will see though, the way that we're looking at it in fiscal year 26, we probably won't be adding much to your debt service levy. But that's all things that we're gonna review. And so you have to have your budget set for fiscal year 26 in April. To be able to do that, you've got to have a public hearing if we're gonna borrow some money and put it into the budget. So again, we'll be reviewing that against where is that in connection? When you get your budget going for fiscal year 26, where's that total debt service levy falling in at? And if we're below the $1.70, we'll probably have a public hearing. Even if you haven't borrowed the debt, we'll probably do some public hearing so that we can build you back up to that $1.70. If we're a little high on the $1.70, then we'll wiggle around and we won't add any of the new debt into the debt service levy. Not that you still can't do it, because you already have funds coming in from other sources like local option sales tax, which is going to pay part of this road project as well.
So where's that? If we, about the local sales tax, if we do the Alliant,
Yeah.
is that the same with that?
Franchise
The
fees.
franchise fees.
That would increase the revenue a little bit of local option sales tax.
No, it would have a small negative impact. Remember, what we get franchise fee is every dollar we get, we receive $1. If it's local option sales tax, every dollar resident pays, we only see 10 cents of it. So there would be a minor drop in local option sales tax, but the franchise fee revenue purpose statement is also going to match local option sales tax.
That's what I was,
So,
We use it for anything we want.
Yeah, so you can use that.
so it'd be the same thing,
yes.
the franchise, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And we've talked about that with, you're not the only city that we're talking to about implementing franchise fees. I know it's another fee on the residents, but the state's not making it easy on your budget and to be able to provide the services and construct and do the projects that you want to do. These are some of the ways that cities are maneuvering around that.
Well, 1%, it's not another fee on the residents.
No, because they were not paying it in the local option sales tax. Yeah, you have the ability in the future years to go up to 5% on those franchise fees. And I will be honest, we have a fair amount of cities who were at 3% and 4%, and they are going up to the maximum of 5%, just like you're thinking about adding the 1%, because they're needing that extra. They've already been at 3% and 4% for years, and they're needing those extra dollars.
Seems like a lot.
Yeah, no, I don't. We'll talk about it in 15 years. When you've had the 1% for 10 years and so, yeah,
Be sooner than that.
yeah, that's,
Okay, if there's no more questions, I guess, thank you very much.
thank you guys for having me down this evening. I appreciate it. Like I said, you'll be seeing stuff on your agendas, probably in the October, November timeframe as we work through all these final numbers with Heidi and Adam and Kevin.
Good.
Thanks, Maggie.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thanks.
Thank you, Maggie.
Have a good night, everybody.
You too, that's the drive home.
Thanks.
Okay, next we have an request to go into closed session. To evaluate professional competency, individual whose appointment, hiring, and performance should be considered. As requested this closed session,
Come on.
Oh, I've got.
sounds way serious than it actually is.
That's a
Go
state
ahead.
law, which we have to
I
sign.
know, I didn't,
Second,
go ahead, Mike.
Okay.
You had a question before we motion.
There was a letter there. Council's questioning somebody's professional competency. I'm not raising that issue. I'm just curious where the issue came from. Also, if we're talking about professional competency, I think we need our city attorney here for interpretation and his opinion.
So no council person called this closed session, correct?
There was a letter that said the council asked for this closed session.
Did a council person ask for this?
The reason I ask is, it's my opinion, only two people can, or eight entities can do a special meeting. And that's the mayor. Also, I'm concerned if there's some, competency issue, which I am not raising, I'll point out,
No, I don't think any one of us is.
that, we need our city attorney present to advise us in a professional manner.
Does anyone agree or disagree?
I kind of agree with them. I don't disagree, but I guess my point is that guess my issue is if there's some issues here, you know, they need to be talked about, they need to be resolved. And how do we go about doing this? Do we really have to go through all of this to get this to happen? Or can it happen some other
Well, I
way?
don't even know what we're trying to get to happen, first of all. I guess Adam's looking for some clarity on
On his job and what
his
his role
job,
is?
yeah, that's,
Absolutely.
that's,
And,
what Adam's-
and he deserves to have that, it's not.
I agree.
So, you know, how do we make that happen? Does it have to be this? Can it be something else? How do we make it happen?
I think,
The only way for us to talk about it is in closed session. We have to get into closed session.
Right,
Mike's wondering if we shouldn't have and Tom might be agreeing and
I'm not
if we shouldn't have
disagreeing.
an attorney.
I'm
here
not
also
disagreeing.
To help us make or clear.
I'm okay with clarification, but when we use the term professional competency, I have a little issue with it, especially when no council member raised. If we want clarification, I can go with that. But I like the term professional competency, and I don't like the fact that the council is here asking for this request.
Which we're not. No one on the council is. I don't know how to word it any differently.
So you guys can play games all you want, but I really think we need to have a discussion too. I deserve a little
We're
bit
not
more
intending to
respect
play
than
any
that.
games.
Well, there's more than one person's reputation on the line here, if I'm interpreting this. It becomes issue of jobs, job roles, and job duties. That's why I think it's really important to have our city attorney present.
So,
We could have a
so
motion.
what if we motion that we have we have a meeting in a week, right?
Regular meeting.
Okay. I guess I wanna get this resolved and get it put behind us, whatever the issue is, so as a council, I going to say that I would like to have a closed session to how'd you word that? Not
Discuss.
copy, however Mike worded that, let's have that discussion next Monday
With the city attorney.
with the
present.
city attorney present. Yes, sir.
Okay, so for lack of motion to go into closed session tonight, there will be no closed session, there can be no closed session. If no one wants to move to go into closed session, we can postpone this until
Sounds like we are not.
6
going to
o'clock
have-
next Monday night.
Sounds like we're not gonna have the people to do it anyway. I mean, I think it's one vote no and it ain't happening, right? So it ain't happening tonight anyway. Mike, are you?
Go into
busy?
closed session.
So I think you'd have to table it, correct?
That's
I
what,
mean, as a formal,
I don't think you table anything because it just didn't pass. So what I'm saying
Yeah,
is,
it just didn't pass.
yeah,
okay,
there's no motion to go into closed session, so,
Got it.
So we're not gonna resolve a goddamn thing.
we're not. But
If
we are.
things- I would say if things can be worked out amongst different people.
Obviously, things are not being worked out if someone has asked for help in this. In this. Their job duties, what their duties are. Who has boundaries, who doesn't have boundaries. That's what's being asked.
That's where
Will
we
tell
need
you that
an
there
attorney
are
here
some
to-
vague areas, between, the mayor and the council also realize they have a place too, a position they have, who they report to. If you're willing to, interpret the Iowa code and West Branch ordinance, I think you would have to table it. Because I think we need our city attorney here to And hopefully the people involved can sit down and figure things out before we leave. Closed session. I understand people want direction and I'm totally okay with that, but, I'm not questioning one's professional competency here. And I don't think that's the best way to put it. If somebody feels threatened, I'm sorry for that. And that's the reason I'm speaking out, because, I'm not questioning anyone's, I do think we need some professional help here.
I tried to call Kevin today to see if he was gonna be here. I don't know if he's out of commission still, but he didn't return my call. Or my text.
Usually when we're off weeks, he's somewhere else.
That's. Yeah,
Washington.
Washington or Seoul on
Washington on
And-
Tuesday.
I think it's four.
Orville's Tuesday.
Since we're talking about policy and not professional competency, I suggest open. There's nothing here that I'm ashamed of, or we should be ashamed of. We represent the city of West Branch, and how we best represent them, should be in an open meeting.
And Mike, I think that, the staff person in question can ask for that post meeting. So it's not up to the council, it's up to the staff person.
But to call a special meeting, it's my understanding, in the code that I've looked, and maybe I missed it. But it takes the majority of the council or the to call a special meeting.
Any
Now,
Which we did.
anyone HR, well, I didn't call a special meeting, reference, professional competency.
No, it was for TIP. It was for the financial.
Yeah, but this was added to the agenda.
Yeah, this is why the special meeting was called for the financial.
Well, that this meeting should have reason and justification to exist.
I'm just talking about the financial.
Okay.
That's why this meeting was called for. So we could talk about it,
Right.
because it was the only day that Maggie could come.
I think the theory was just to resolve it tonight versus dragging it on for another week.
I think the city attorney is, not here. If he was here.
Mike, I don't disagree with you. You don't have to.
I'm not arguing with this, just only debate.
No, I know.
Okay, I'll
You
ask,
don't have to convince.
I'll ask out loud again. I'll ask for a motion to go into closed session. If I don't hear one, we'll have to adjourn.
What do you think, Jody?
I voice my opinion,
It's not gonna pass.
I know. So,
Okay, hearing no motion to go into closed session, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
I-